So today's topic is positive reinforcement training. Treats are only the beginning. What does it really mean? How does it affect you and your dogs? And what does it look like in your everyday life? Because it's there already. What does positive reinforcement really mean? It's kind of a buzzword, right? Positive reinforcement training. I do positive reinforcement training. So we're going to start with the dry stuff, the definitions, okay? From a scientific point of view. So there's two words, positive and reinforcement. So the first word, positive, you may think of something good. Positive is good, right? And that's not far off. But when we speak from a behavior science perspective, positive means adding something into the situation. So it's kind of like positive and negative numbers. With a positive number, you're adding something to the situation. With negative, you're taking something away. So positive means putting something into the situation. So how many times a day do you intervene in your dog's lives? Like 1,000? Probably at least. You hand them a bowl of food. You open a door for them to go out. You throw a ball for them. You pick up a leash and put it on them and go for a walk or whatever, right? You give them a treat. So all of those interventions are putting something into the situation. What happened right before that? Because whatever behavior that was might be reinforced by what you're doing. Okay, so think how we could use that. All right, so let's talk about the word reinforcement. That may conjure up images of the military, of the troops. Let's get reinforcements in there. And, that's not far off either because it's about strengthening behavior. But reinforcement from a behavior science perspective is very specific. A reinforcement comes after a behavior. It comes immediately after a behavior. It's contingent on that behavior, and it increases the behavior. So immediately after a behavior, that means you don't get to, because your dog did something cool, you don't, having a ceremony this evening where he gets, cake and ice cream isn't probably going to be connected to what he did to earn that ceremony with the cake and ice cream later, right? And in fact, this is true of humans too. Humans can understand rewards because we have rational thought. So, you can say, I'm going to take you out to dinner on the weekend because of this cool thing you did today. But we can't do that with dogs. They don't get that. So it's immediately after a behavior is when reinforcement happens. It's contingent on the behavior. It means it depends on that behavior. It only happened as a result of that behavior. You wouldn't give the dog the treat if he didn't sit or give you his paw or whatever it was you were working on, right? And it increases the behavior, usually in frequency or in intensity of the behavior. And that's what training is, right? Your dog may sit a couple of times, but you want him to sit more often, and then you want to be able to put a cue with that to build it so you can use it, right? You want your dog to, like for a recall, you don't want him to walk to you. You want him to run with intensity to you. So that's what we mean by increasing the behavior in some way. So if you give your dog a treat after he sits more often. If when your dog comes to you, you give him a treat, he may come faster next time. So I want to bring up a kind of a side topic right here, because back to positive is good. Is it? First of all, the dog defines what is reinforcement, what's going to build the behavior. But remember that positive is putting something into the situation. So something that happens pretty frequently, not among any of you, but other people do this. When dogs jump up, people yell at them because they're upset because they got their clothes muddy. No, stop, off, and knee them in the chest. Well, some dogs may see that as a game. They're like, oh, I like this wrestling fighting game. And the jumping can increase as a result of that. You don't know till later whether you reinforced a behavior or not, because it depends, remember, on whether that behavior happens more frequently or happens with more intensity. So, if the jumping up happens more often, you know that it was reinforced, and probably by the yelling and the kneeing in the chest. So the definitions work in reverse. So if something happens more frequently, we know it has been reinforced and it is being reinforced. If you've reinforced something, it will happen more frequently or with more intensity. So that's the basic definition of positive reinforcement. And the lesson here is that positive reinforcement means the consequences of a behavior can strengthen the behavior, and we can use that. But wait, there's more. There's association, also known as classical conditioning and Pavlovian conditioning. Those are all the same thing. If you see any of those terms, they're all the same. And they have to do with reflexes and emotions. So what happens when you smell your favorite food cooking? First of all, you start to conjure up, how great it's going to taste, and maybe some memories of the friends and family you've eaten that food with before, and the lovely day that you spent together, and that food was part of it. And what happens? Your mouth starts to water. That's a reflex. And it's association is what creates it, Pavlovian conditioning. So this one's really easy to see as Pavlovian conditioning because we know that Pavlov got those dogs to salivate on some very odd stimuli. What happens when you hear a favorite song from high school? You reflexively start to reminisce about the fun that you had when that song was on, maybe your first love or a fight you had with your best friend or, whatever happens while that song was on in your youth. So that's association. It brings up those reflexive emotional responses. All right, so what happens to dogs as a result of association? So think about your own dogs. What happens when your dog sees a leash? Does he go, nah? Some foster dogs do, right? Well, your dog might go, yippee, 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 I'll do anything to get the leash. Oh my gosh, love my leash. Oh. What happens when you walk by a crate and the door's open? Does he jump in there and go, oh, I love my crate? Does he go, nah, or something in between? Those are happening because of associations, right? So what happens when your dog hears a dog barking? So that's an interesting one because he may bark at the dog. The barking and what you're seeing with the dog's body language to let you know, is he barking to say, you need to go away because I'm afraid of you and I need you far away, or if you come too close, I might have to defend myself, or I'm going to jump on you before you can jump on me. Is that what's happening? Or is the dog saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I want to play, I want to play, I want to play right now? So either way, the dog's kind of not very controllable in that moment. But what does he want? Is he trying to get closer to the dog, or is he trying to get farther away from the dog based on the emotional response he's having? So both of those are association. It's what he's associated with seeing a dog, right? Good or bad associations may have happened already, and that's what you're seeing. Okay, the lesson. The lesson here is that a dog's emotional state is important for learning specific behaviors. He can't learn to sit when you ask him to if he's afraid in the environment you're in, or if he's afraid of you. He's not going to learn to sit like you want him to. He's not going to learn to walk nicely with you for a walk if he's afraid of the leash. So all of these things work together, and know that you can change his emotional response. Pavlov did it. We do it every day. And if we harness our power and apply it deliberately, wow, the things we can do. All right. So I'm going to talk briefly about punishment, because positive punishment is a term that we hear. It's also a buzzword, and we're not going to go very much deeper into these buzzwords because we have more important stuff to talk about. But remember that positive is adding something to the situation. Punishment, like reinforcement, is also immediately after a behavior. It's contingent on the behavior, but it decreases the behavior. Wow, fun, right? Woohoo! We just reinforce what we like and we punish what we don't like. Nope, nope, nope. That is not what we do. We end up with some really bad fallout from that approach. Because here's why. Remember association? Animals learn from punishment provided by nature, and so do we. The punishment that nature provides is usually swift and often fierce. It can create reflexes like avoidance and emotions like fear for your life, which fear can be a good thing in the right circumstance. If a tiger is charging at you with his mouth open and claws out, the fear causes you to pump adrenaline into your bloodstream and give you that motivation that you need to fight or flee. However, if the tiger does attack you or your dog, injuries can result. Burns, broken bones, gashes that maybe kill you, so it doesn't matter what you learn from that because you're dead now. But if you recover, yes, you've learned from that. But look at the price you had to pay. One of the results that we see from continual unpredictability and fear-inducing responses in foster dogs, and I know that you've all seen this, is that hypervigilance, where they come into your home and they're watching their back. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? It's almost like it seems like we're seeing a pessimistic response from them. That's anthropomorphizing, but it's like whatever happens, they're ready to respond as though that were going to be bad. We've all seen those dogs. On the other end of the spectrum, there are those dogs that look very optimistic. Again, anthropomorphizing for effect. But when dogs are curious and they're ready to, explore and check out whatever new comes along, that can be a great thing, and it opens them up to learning, right? So that's what we're striving for here. So a punisher will always cause an emotional response. Creating good emotional responses is helpful to you. If a dog loves a leash, he'll be willing to do anything to get you to put the leash on so he can do the other things that he's been conditioned to know come after: a nice walk, fun things. And that association, that open-mindedness, that optimism, if you will, spreads to other things in the vicinity. To you, oh, you're holding the leash, so you must be good too. And there's a chair here, and it must be good too. Okay, so let's look at those negative emotional responses, like fear is the main one that results in, it leads to aggression, of course, it leads to hypervigilance, it leads to stress, defensiveness, and all those things. Fear decreases confidence. And that association spreads to whatever else is around too. And we can't control that. We can influence the association some, but we cannot control what associations get made. And the behaviors expressed as a result of that generalization and that learning increase. So we start to see more backing away, defensiveness, and all the things that lead up to biting, right? That's generalization. And fear is a strong emotion, and it generalizes very quickly. Okay, the lesson is punishment carries a lot of baggage with it. And there is always fallout that you're not going to be able to control, as well as you can control the results of using positive reinforcement. Plus, okay, one more thing. Remember that changing observable behavior is literally creating new neural pathways in the learner's brain. It happens to you every day. It happens to dogs every day. And to me, I promise not to talk about this for very long, but I get super excited about it. Changing an observable behavior literally is changing cells in the brain, because learning happens at the synapses, where the neurotransmitters are released from one neuron and taken up by the next one, which is the beginning of the chain of events that leads to muscle movement and behavior. Wow, look what you can do. Okay, so how does this affect you and your dogs? Well, let's look at an example. So this is an example that I know none of you would do, but it's one you hear about from others. So potty problems. Dog pees on the floor. The owner yells at the dog, or worse, people do all kinds of crazy things because they don't know any better, you know, to try to change that behavior. But, they do all kinds of things to dogs when they pee on the floor. So then what happens? The dog pees on the floor when the owner's not around. The dog starts to go into the other room to pee on the floor, right? So it's not probably the outcome the owner had in mind. So let's look at the associations that are happening there. The yelling and whatever things that the owner did to the dog because he peed on the floor become associated with the owner. Because they're right there with the owner. The owner's there. They're getting associated with the owner probably very close to 100% of the time. They're also associated with peeing probably close to 100% of the time because that's what's happening. They may also be associated with other things in the vicinity, as we talked about, possibly the location of where the dog peed, which is what the owner's counting on, right? The owner's thinking, I'll yell at him when he pees there. So maybe that does happen. But the problem is that the owner hasn't been able to isolate that particular quality of what's going on, the location of where the dog peed, the carpet, from all the other things that are involved, including himself. So now, he's created probably a fear response, some emotional reflexive response in the dog. And fear is a very strong influence and generalizes quickly. So chew on that for a minute. And let's kick it up a notch. Let's go beyond positive reinforcement. Let's go up another level, because this is where it really gets exciting. Are we trying to train pathologically? Are we focusing on the problem and trying to make it go away? What if we looked at training from a constructional point of view? So here's the difference. Peeing on the floor is bad and it's a problem and it has to go away. Or, dogs have to pee to live. Where would we like for them to pee? That's the difference between pathological and constructional training. So, constructional training involves positive reinforcement for sure, but it's focusing on the components, the tools, the skills, the building blocks of the larger sets of behavior. If you want to read about constructional training, you need to start with Israel Gold Diamond. You can look it up. What does constructional training look like in your everyday life? And if you want to call it positive reinforcement training, do so. It is based on positive reinforcement, but it's another aspect. It's a larger picture of it. So let's look at component behaviors. Here's one, lifting the right front paw. Your paws are on the floor. You lift your right front paw. That's a behavior, and it can be a component. Lift the paw. Lift the paw. So is a dog willing to lift his paw already? Hey, Albert, can you wake up and join me, sir? Come over here, buddy. So is the dog willing to lift his right front paw? Are you willing to give a treat when he does do it? Can you resist grabbing his paw and lifting it for him and give him that choice? And why does that matter? So that's what we want to address. So the behavior component of lifting a paw is a building block to other behaviors. Hey, Al, come here. Come here. Are you so shy today? Are you so shy because the camera? Come here, you. Sit. Good boy. Right. Yes. Good job. So if a dog can lift a paw, he can take a step. He can go for a walk. He can go in a crate. He can go outside and pee. He can walk on a new surface. He can learn agility or freestyle. or other dog sports? Can the dog, oh, Al, you're so tired. Come here, buddy, hey! I know, the camera's on. It's terrible, terrible, terrible. If a dog can lift his paw and touch a human hand, left. Yeah, that was the one. Yes, sir. Then he can get a thorn taken out if he has a thorn. He can get his feet wiped if they're muddy or they're wet. It's the step toward doing that. So it's a component that can be built into other behaviors. Oh, here's one more. Can my dog, oh, my dog, why are you so tired? Yeah, sit. Can the dog lift a paw while the human is holding scissors or nail clippers, right? Good boy. So now that's one component of being able to trim the hair on his foot. Or if it's nail clippers, trimming his nails, right? So you can see how you can start with components and then you can build really important behaviors. If the dog can lift his paw and touch something else, which I don't know if you can, what do you do? We were practicing earlier. Can you do it? Get up. Yes, good job. Good boy. Can you do it over here? Yeah, you're going to retrieve it now? That's so silly. Come over here. Can you touch it? Yeah, good boy. Yes. Thank you. It's a little sloppy, but he got it done. So if a dog can lift his paw and touch something else, then what can you build from that? You can build parkour and agility, getting up on things, putting your paws on stuff. You can build turning on a light switch, turning it off, closing a door. I mean, the possibilities are endless. Oh, putting your paws up on something to be lifted up, like the threshold of the car door to be lifted in, putting them up on the grooming table to be lifted up. So what's the lesson here? One little building block can be added to the building blocks involved in a big behavior set. You can take that same building block and grab some other building blocks from another behavior set and build something bigger. So that's what constructional training is. So let's look at another one. So the dog lies on a mat. Al, come here, buddy. You're already laying on a mat. Come here. Come on, get up, booger, Matt. There you go. Good job. What a good boy. You're such a good boy. So the dog can lay on a mat here. That's all. Come here. Come on. He can lay on a mat here. Yep. And so who cares? What can you do with this? Think of what you can build. Come on, let's go. Mat. Good job. He can lay on a mat by the front door. What if this was the front door? And then we could open the door. And we can teach him to lie on the mat while we greet a visitor, invite the visitor in, collect our pizza from the delivery guy, and bring it in. That's all. Come on. And then get off the mat when he's asked. So there's a lot of other pieces, a lot of other components that he needs to learn to be able to do that whole behavior set. But lying on a mat is, again, a building block that we can take and apply to other things. Other things you can apply it to would include being able to go to a patio restaurant and have your, bring your little mat, a little rug along, and your dog is familiar with a mat, and you put him on a mat under your table, and now you can enjoy your coffee with friends or whatever. You can use it when you're waiting at the vet. You can use it to teach a dog to ride in a car. Sometimes that reduces the anxiety that the dog feels in the car when he's learned to be on a mat in another area, and then he sees his familiar mat, and here's that familiar cue inside the car. Being in a crate is the same thing. You start with a mat, you teach him to be in a crate, you put the crate in the car. Now you're carefully structuring a constructional approach to just, the car is a good thing because now you're associating, because remember, association is happening all the time too, and answering the door. So to do the door thing, you also are going to need calm, relaxed association with the doorbell, with knocking, with the sound of a car driving up, with the sound of a door opening and closing as someone gets out, with the sound of somebody walking up to the door. So those are things that all start with association, and they're so simple. It is nothing more than knock, knock, and a treat. So that the dog, the first time, really only the first time is it pure association, because then the dog's learning, oh, I hear a knock, knock, I check with mom to see if there's a treat available, right? Okay. So when you have that individual piece of lying on a mat, I already talked about what you can build, but the way that you would do that is, for instance, suppose we've conditioned the dog to be calm and responsive to you when he hears a doorbell, right? And then we've taught him to lie on a mat. So then we can combine ring the doorbell, go to a mat by the door, right? Practice that for a little bit. So you're putting two blocks together to build a bigger piece of behavior. Then what if we do this? What if we skip the doorbell part? We just go lie on a mat and we open the door and teach them that that's a good thing. So we've added those two pieces together. So then pretty quickly, we can put all three together. Then we can, maybe we lie on a mat, open the door, somebody's at the door. So it's the individual components. And what happens when first of all, it's amazing what you can build. Second of all, what do you do if you fail? Failure is okay. If you fail, if the dog fails, you go to the piece of behavior, you go to that component that was causing trouble, and you just rebuild that a little bit better and then put it back into the mix. How fun is that? So you can break it down. You can isolate that one component. Like, remember, the owner couldn't isolate where the dog was peeing and from himself. You don't have to isolate all of it, but you do want to just ask the dog to do one behavior. You know that you're going to be associated with it, and you know that your treats and your consequences, which are all going to be good, right, are going to be associated with it too. So you just build. It's like building blocks. Okay, so you're going to see benefits even if you don't finish a behavior. Every individual behavioral component that you build with a dog through positive reinforcement will give you benefits. And they include mental stimulation for you and the dog, because, dogs need physical exercise and they need mental stimulation. And what in the world is this but solving a problem? The dog is solving the problem of what behavior to do to make that treat appear. So back to our definitions, when we talk about reinforcement, we speak of reinforcing behavior, not reinforcing the dog. We're reinforcing behavior because the dog's always there. It's that dog making a choice to do the behavior. We use positive reinforcement, putting reinforcement into the equation that increases the behavior because the dog is likely to do the behavior again. So that's what we're doing, and he's solving the puzzle of, wait, what did I do to make that happen? Oh yeah, it was this. So mental stimulation. Partnership. We talk about bonding all the time. We can't measure it. We can't measure partnership, but I know that you can feel it, and that's my reinforcement. Being able to work in tandem with a dog as a partner, having him do his part and I'm doing my part, and we're working together, it just feels good. You're teaching skills that will help that dog in his future with his adopter. Even if all you ever taught him was to lift one paw, he's better off than he was before he came to you. And that may help him the day that adopter, when he gets all muddy in the backyard the first day and he's nervous and he's stressed and the adopter needs to wipe his feet. He's done that before. So maybe he can get through it a lot easier because of what you did. You're going to get a more calm and relaxed dog. You're learning the skills of planning and observation and reinforcement that you can apply in other situations with other dogs. You get the satisfaction of a calm and reduced stress dog. And above all, you learn that you can control the situation, not necessarily by controlling the dog, although you kind of are, But by controlling the situation, that because you know what situation you created that allowed that dog to learn to do that behavior and offer it to you. So that's what constructional training is all about. It is positive reinforcement. We use a lot of treats. I use treats all the time, but we could also put a mat by the back door. When the dog really wants to go out and chase a squirrel, and believe me, Al isn't usually asleep all the time, and when there's a squirrel in the backyard, he gets a little crazy. So we do ask him to do something before we let him out. If you want it that bad, then you could do something. You could lie on a mat. You could go out. You could sit. I could open the door as a result. So all those are reinforcers too. All the things that you give to your dog, the opportunities, the items, those can all be reinforcers. And so be predictable, prevent what you don't want, and reinforce the opposite of what you don't want. Rely on positive reinforcement to use constructional training to explore with the dog what behavior components you can create together, and watch that dog's confidence and his ability to respond to your training, and anybody doing positive reinforcement training. Watch that grow, because this training is highly transferable. If the next person acts the same way, then that dog is going to, generalization has to occur, but that dog's going to jump right into the game pretty quickly. And you're not going to do any inadvertent damage. The worst damage you could do using positive reinforcement is if you don't do it well and you don't focus on those individual components well enough, and the dog gets confused about how he can get the treat, because that does happen. You know, we all fall into the trap of asking for a little bit too much, and the dog's like, I don't know what to do. I just wanted to get the treat. I don't know how to get it. And gets frustrated, gets a little stressed, walks away. But that's nothing compared to the damage that you can do with using punishment for teaching purposes. So you have a lot of freedom with it. So I hope that I've answered some questions for you. I hope that I've also opened up some other questions for you, because that's the cool thing, because just like with the dogs, I want you to open up your curiosity about how you can get reinforced. So in this question, whoever asked described a couple of situations associated with a leash. So apparently, if in the morning, if they pick up the leash and show it to the dog's happy and excited, can't wait to get the leash attached to go for a walk. And in the evening, apparently, they take the leash out to take the dog to his crate to go to bed. And at that time, when the dog sees the leash, he says, "Ah," or something along those lines. So I kind of want to turn that around and ask y'all some questions. What are you hearing? So remember that associations happen with the entire environment. Think of a snapshot. Dogs look at the world in a snapshot view. So in the morning, what's happened? He woke up, you get the leash out. I would suspect that the owner maybe has a little bit different behavior at that moment, because they're expecting that the dog is going to be happy and excited, and they're looking forward also to the walk with their dog maybe. And then what happens? They go for a walk. The dog has fun. Maybe he gets some treats. Maybe he sees some stuff. He's mentally stimulated. Everything is great. So all of that is working together to create that good association. In the evening, same leash. You take out the same leash, but the entire environment is different. The snapshot is different. Perhaps the owner is behaving differently because they're going, "Oh, I have to make my dog unhappy. I don't want to make my dog unhappy. I know he doesn't like this. Okay, let me get the leash." So there's that. There's clearly the dog always goes to the crate to go to bed. So what do we know? The leash is not being reinforced. or associated with anything good. I'm sorry, the behavior of the dog helping to put the leash on is not being reinforced because it's not getting better. So clearly something's going on that he doesn't like. So he's making bad associations in that evening time. So I suspect that the subtext of this question is, how can I change that? And you can change it. So, I mean, I can think of a million ways. I don't know what works for you, but of course, the morning, we got it. Great. So this is the leash. We're going to go. And, in the evening, possibly you use a different leash. Possibly you change your routine so that you put the leash on and you go for a walk, a little short walk maybe. And it's fun though. You have some fun. Maybe you just play. Maybe you can't go for a walk, but you put the leash on, you have a little play session with some treats. Maybe you have a little training session with some treats with the leash on. And this is fun and this is great. And then at the end, you lead him over and he goes to bed. Probably gets a treat for going in his crate. But clearly, whatever's happening with the crate is not enough to offset the bad association he has with that whole scenario. So breaking it down into components, since that's what we're talking about, we look at every piece. Can we use a different leash? Maybe we want to use the same leash. Maybe you're already using a different leash and you want to use the same leash that's associated with good things in the morning. There's also the time of day. I mean, dogs have circadian rhythms. The time of day is associated with what's going on the same way. So just breaking it down, maybe during the day, you play some little crate games. Just the crate. If you come near the crate, you get a treat, and then you can run away. You don't have to go in it. So you're building going in the crate as one component. You're building staying in the crate for small periods of time as another component. You build being on the leash at random times of the day and just walking around having a good time and then taking the leash off. So that's one way. Those are some of the components, but you have to look at all the components, see what you can break out and train each one. But it's a really good example of how that one behavior of you taking the leash out causes one association in the morning and a different association in the evening, and thinking through how you can take it apart and rebuild it.